The finish of the 2024 Indianapolis 500 was an all-timer, with Josef Newgarden sending one around the outside of Pato O'Ward into turn 3 on the final lap to bring home his second 500 win in a row. Jubilation for Newgarden and Penske, but heartbreak for O'Ward and McLaren. This got me thinking, in the entire history of the Indy 500, what are some other heartbreaking ways drivers have had defeat snatched from the jaws of victory, whether that be through their own fault or not? It's one thing to get beat in a flat-out fight like O'Ward did. Obviously, seeing the race fall away from you in the dying stages is tough, but there's been plenty of examples like that. Rick Mears in 1982, Scott Goodyear in 1992, Michael Andretti in 1991, and Marco Andretti in 2006. Unfortunately, you're going to be hearing the name Andretti a lot in this video. Coming that close is always tough to stomach and deal with, but sometimes the manner in which you lose the Indy 500 can be much more preposterous. In terms of absurd Indy 500 losses, there's really three categories: strategy calls, car troubles, and the unthinkable. We'll get to those other two later. Let's start with strategy calls. Eddie Sachs had the pit strategy to win in 1961 when AJ Foyt's crew was unable to get his car full of fuel on what should have been his last pit stop of the race. In a cruel twist of fate, however, it was Sachs who ultimately had the bigger problem, a delaminating tire, and had to pull in to change that tire on safety grounds with 3 laps to go, handing the win back to Foyt. For most of its history, the Indy 500 has been a marathon, not a sprint, and there were huge gaps between cars, so pit strategy didn't play too much of a factor. But by the turn of the millennium, the field was beginning to be more tightly packed, putting a greater emphasis on taking a pit gamble if you didn't have quite enough pace to be up front. Sometimes you have to hope the cautions fall your way. In 1999, Robby Gordon decided to top off with fuel under yellow with 36 laps to go, and eventually cycled to the front. But in the closing laps, he backed off trying to save fuel, with Kenny Brack and AJ Foyt's number 14 car closing in. If the fuel held up, Gordon would have scored a popular 500 win for team owner John Menard, who had spent the entire decade doing whatever it took trying to win the race. Unfortunately, it wasn't meant to be. Coming to the white, the fuel finally ran out, and Gordon limped home in 4th, handing Kenny Brack the win, and giving AJ Foyt a big win as a car owner, and as of this date, it is the last time the Foyt team has won the 500. There's obviously been other bold strategy calls that didn't quite work out, most notably Danica Patrick's run in her first outing in 2005, and more recently Stefan Wilson and Oriol Servia in the 2018 Indy 500, both of whom tried to stretch the fuel and with no green-white checkered gimmick, hoped for a yellow to end the race early. Had the original caution from which Gordon had pitted come a few laps later, he might have been able to bring it home like Alexander Rossi did in 2016. But Robby Gordon's 1999 heartbreak stands out as the one failed strategy gamble that was closer than any other to actually working. Well, there is one other example, but I'll save that for later on. In modern auto racing, the reliability of the cars and engines has gotten so good for the most part that even 500-mile races feel like sprints to the checkered. But for the large majority of the race's long history, the winner was determined by whose car was able to go the distance while having the speed to lead. There's been plenty of dominant cars that ultimately came away with nothing to show for it. However, the most notorious of these cases, in my opinion, is Mario Andretti in 1987. 18 years on since his victory in 1969, Mario dominated the entire month, finishing top of the charts in practice in over half of the sessions, won the pole by a full 2 miles an hour quicker than second place, and in the race put down a blistering pace that saw him lap the field well into the top 5. The only laps he hadn't led were during pit cycles. With 25 to go, he lapped the entire field, with Roberto Guerrero in second, and Al Unser Sr. ran third, a full 2 laps down. On lap 177 though, Andretti slowed and brought the car to pit road. An electrical failure in the fuel injection system put pay to what should have been the most dominant victory in 500 history. This handed the lead to Guerrero, who should have coasted home to victory, but he too had mechanical gremlins. Suffering gearbox problems all day, his car got stuck in gear, stalled, and refired multiple times during his final pit stop. It was a whole ordeal, and it handed the lead to Al Unser. Guerrero did get going again, unlapped himself from Unser, and then caught a break when Mario, who had returned to the track after repairs, stalled in turn 4. Guerrero had another chance, but Unser pulled away for his 4th Indy win, leaving Guerrero wondering what might have been. But 1987 would not be the last time and Andretti suffered weird mechanical problems. In 1989, Michael Andretti started mid-pack, but by the time he worked his way to the lead in the latter stages of the race, his engine let go. Just 5 years after Mario's heartbreaking engine issue in 1987, Michael would again suffer the same fate. The 1992 race was wild and crazy from start to finish, but the one thing that was constant was Michael up front. With 11 laps to go and a half a lap lead, the fuel pump expired and Michael ground to a screeching halt. Once again, a Newman-Haas car dominated the race and came away with nothing. On a day in which Dad Mario and brother Jeff were injured during the race, Michael could have salvaged something for the family, but it wasn't meant to be. I don't think the Andretti curse peaked as much as it did on that day in 1992. Pit strategy and car failures are one thing, but there's still a human element inside the cars. And often, those humans make mistakes, sometimes colossal ones. In 1995, Scott Goodyear led on the final restart, but he roared out of turn 3 wanting to get a jump on his fellow Canadian Jacques Villeneuve. However, he passed the pace car in turn 4. Villeneuve saw this, basically stomped on his brakes and almost caused a massive pileup to avoid passing the pace car. Villeneuve had already been penalized for it earlier in the race, and knew doing so would come with another penalty. Goodyear was immediately assessed a stop-go penalty, which the team told him to ignore because they felt they could appeal any penalty and wanted him to technically cross the line first, even though USAC would stop scoring him. Well, they did stop scoring him, and Villeneuve inherited the win through the same penalty that had caused him to go down 2 laps in the first quarter of the race. Goodyear argued that the pace car had gone way too slowly all day long, and he claimed to have seen the green lights on. But it's pretty much a universal understanding in all forms of racing to never pass the pace car before it dives off to pit road unless you're instructed to do so. Goodyear made a big mistake, and it cost him the 1995 Indy 500. But when it comes to making a big mistake that cost you the Indy 500, none will ever compare to the 2011 race. Panther Racing, an original IRL team, had won plenty of races and championships with the likes of Sam Hornish Jr., but they had never won the 500. Entering 2011, Panthers' number 4 entry had finished second 3 years in a row with Vitor Meira and Dan Wheldon, but in this race they had rookie JR Hildebrand. On lap 164, Hildebrand topped off on fuel under yellow, hoping to go the full distance. It turned out to be the last yellow of the race, meaning the leaders would pit again under green, making strategy plausible for the 4 car. The other cars who pitted with Hildebrand, Bertrand Baguette and Dario Franchitti, pitted and fell back into full-on conservation respectively. Only the hard-charging Dan Wheldon was anywhere near Hildebrand. As he entered turn 4 on the final lap, Hildebrand tried to pass the lap car of Charlie Kimball, but got too far into the marbles on his worn tires and pounded the wall at the exit of 4. Still, he kept momentum up and slid toward the yard of bricks, but Wheldon passed him just before the line and will always be the most insane Indy 500 finish ever. I know we've seen some fantastic endings, but the sheer insanity of this finish will be hard to top. What went wrong? To sum it up, Hildebrand made a rookie mistake. He was a rookie. Many rookies either get up in the marbles and hit the wall, or take too much rumble strip on the inside and get sent around. It's a common lesson for newcomers at the speedway. In any case, the 2011 race will always stick out as the most brutal loss in Indy 500 history. Throughout the long history of the greatest spectacle in racing, 32 drivers come up short every Memorial Day weekend, but some defeats are more devastating than others. There's plenty more in this video that I did not mention. What do you think was the worst loss in Indy 500 history? Who had the race in the bag until it all came undone? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next video.